Ben, I think you made an error here. Dune month was that was last month, so I don't know what's going on. I don't know why there's a hairy man sitting across from me. What's going on?
Are you talking to me or the other hairy man?
I assume that I'm talking about the other hairy man.
My name is Mountanto. You can call me James if you prefer. That's easier to remember. But I maintain the film blog If You Want the Gravy, and I recently wrote reviews both of the new Denis Villeneuve Dune, which I got to see on Thursday night, and I then had a big beer on Friday night and rewatched David Lynch's Dune. So I'm filled with thoughts about both of those movies, and I spend most of my time thinking about movies, so...
Yeah, he's like a walking database of movies.
It's called the IMDb.
Yeah, that's you're the human version of that. In the world of Dune, you huffed a bunch of spice and you memorized the entire IMDb.
I'm a mentat for movies.
You awoke your genetic memories of all the movies.
Well, Jews did build the movie industry, and I am one, so I can make that kind of comment.
I also definitely talked way too loud at the beginning, so good luck editing that, Ben. We have definitely had some to drink, and Ben was very kind to start recording with us after midnight.
Hey, we've got to get this while the sands of Arrakis are hot. I think so. All three of us have seen the movie at this point.
Yes.
Yeah, I just watched it today.
So I have read James' review, and so it seems like James had a very positive impression.
By and large, yes.
And I had a very positive impression. Now, Nate, I'm not sure that you had a very positive impression.
I guess what I would say would be, I guess a thumbs up. Like, It wasn't bad. There was a lot that I liked about it.
I can testify Nate wasn't paying that much attention.
To be fair, I was also watching a child all day on my own, so I was taking care of her while watching the movie.
But the child wasn't watching them.
Well, she already watched the miniseries, and yeah,
she already watched the miniseries. Yeah. She preferred the other Baron.
I preferred the other Baron.
So I gotta ask. So I'm coming at it from the adaptation of the book perspective. I thought it was about the best adaptation I could have asked for. Did you not?
Did I not think that it was the best adaptation I could have asked for?
Yeah.
I'm sure you could have made minor improvements here and there. I think that maybe your argument is right, though, that a lot of it is the source material.
My main qualm with the film, and this might have just been because it was the first time I saw it, was that I admired virtually everything about it, but I was lacking a certain amount of emotional investment. It's hard to explain exactly how, because it wasn't like I felt the acting was bad or too restrained or that the characters weren't well developed as film characters, but I wanted to be swept up in it a little more than I was. I was in great admiration of nearly every technical aspect of the film, like on a level of production, costume, sound design, makeup, cinematography, music, visual effects. It's pretty much it's an unimpeachable film. And I can't really find fault with any of the acting, it's just that on a certain level it felt a bit cold to me. But I also sort of felt the same way about Blade Runner 2049 the first time, and it's improved greatly on a second viewing. And if you read my review on ifyouwantthegravy.wordpress.com, you'll see that I gave it 4 stars, but I rated it an 87 out of 100, which is the very bottom end of my 4-star scale. So I recognize its greatness, but I'm also saying it just got in there because I was wavering between that and a slightly lower rating much of the time. So I probably differ too much about numerical scores and that sort of thing. but I did find myself wanting to be a little more swept up in it. But at the same time, I couldn't say that there was anything about it that was less than good, and the vast majority of it was great.
So I'm interested. I read a New Yorker review that took a stance that I thought was just bizarre. And that was that the David Lynch Dune, I'm trying to remember what he said, was a visceral, emotional experience. And that
it had Sting in his underwear.
that the Villeneuve Dune was sterile and boring.
Well, I can say I don't think the David Lynch film is visceral and emotional. I think it's tedious and expositional in the extreme.
Yes, okay.
Here's what I'll say about the Lynch film, because I think that was about my third or fourth time actually watching it.
Oh my god.
Hey man, I've seen Dance and It's On 3 times. Or was it 4?
Oh, I've seen the David Lynch Dune at least 3 times, once with it.
Oh my god. Oh my god, how could you?
But
Here's
the thing, is it's one of those movies where you've got those high points, like pretty much everything with the Harkonnens, and then like a few scattered other bits like, I don't know, the cancer-ridden manatee that is the third stage guild navigator, or the performance by Jose Ferrer as Emperor Shaddam, which my mother always cited as one of the all-time worst examples of a major actor slumming it.
I love this.
I've actually recently found a cache of a bunch of my mother's old television reviews, and I need to try and put those on social media somehow, because she could get pretty savage when she felt like it. I guess that's where I got it from.
I was gonna say, I think this is where you got your hobby from.
My parents' first date was watching a Elizabethan drama on PBS. My dad made linguine with clam sauce, and I could eat spaghetti every day of my life, so that probably tells you something. Anyway, what I was saying was, Lynch's Dune is one of those movies where you've got those high points, but if you really connected them together, they'd make up maybe 15 minutes of a 2-hour and 16-minute film, which leaves 2 hours and a minute of mostly really dreary shit. That movie is so full of people just explaining the story in the dullest, flattest terms, and it's kind of deadly to watch, especially on a second or third viewing.
I will never forget. I mean, it's right at the beginning of the movie when Irulan is giving her background speech, and she fades to black and then comes back and goes, "Oh, and I forgot to tell you." Like, she's literally talking to us. Mm-hmm. Like, it wasn't just a recording or something. She's literally telling the audience what's going on.
That's how all the epics and all the greats start out.
Oh, how is it that the Odyssey begins? O muse, sing of the spice planet and the worms and my husband who will never touch me because he hates me.
Oh God, it's so true. Okay, so I'm glad I'm not just going insane, and that because I totally understand a lack of
clickbait.
No, I was going to say I totally understand thinking there is a lack of emotional investment, and that you're constantly told that these characters are real great friends and that they're all very loyal and they've got a great relationship, but you never see them do anything that establishes that, and that's a major problem of the book. And I would say part 1 of the first Dune book is some of the weakest stuff in the entire series.
Garbage. Absolute garbage.
I wouldn't go that far, but
shoulda cut it.
Well,
the book starts with Paul just waking up in the middle of the desert, and you just go from there.
It's all just flashbacks.
I still recognize some really good little moments of humanity that they were able to work in there. Especially the little running bit with Jessica teaching Paul how to use the voice. When she's trying to get him to... At the start, she's trying to get him to work on it, to practice it at breakfast, and he's like, "Mom, please, I just got up. Give me a break." She's like, ask me to use the voice to tell me to pass you the water. And he's like, ugh, fine. And it's just like, 20 years, 1,000 years from now, yeah, teenagers are still going to be grumpy in the morning. Paul's
we need to breed that out.
Well, and I like his constant calling Gurney Halleck old man, and that Gurney Halleck is this like tormented, just deadpan kind of guy who occasionally quotes epic poetry that we don't really understand the references to.
But we don't need to. I mean, we actually do get poetic Gurney Halleck, and it doesn't feel like authorial showboating.
Oh, yes. Yes. They handled that as well as they could. And
he needed a sick lute solo.
You mean balisette?
I don't care. Bagpipes.
Bagpipes.
Bust them out.
We had a bagpipe solo. Come on.
We saw bagpipes, but it wasn't Gurney. I feel like that's a real missed opportunity.
We had a bagpipe choreographed fight scene. What are you talking about, sir?
Yeah, what we need, us personally, is to say that the David Lynch movie was the greatest in retrospect. Get all that clickbait.
Well, I did explain previously in what was meant to be a completely private conversation that the only way to judge these two films against one another is to mention that David Lynch has 3 Oscar nominations for Best Director, and Denis Villeneuve only has 1. Ergo, Lynch's film is 3 times as good. And since I rated Villeneuve's an 87, that means that Lynch's I rate a 261 on a 100-point scale. So it's 2 perfect films and 1 mediocre film left over.
The whole time I was reading this New Yorker review, I am just picturing, and it's getting larger and larger in my mind, the image of Patrick Stewart with a pug stuffed down his shirt and a gun in his hand, charging at the Harkonnens.
That is admittedly one of the more impressive moments in the Lynch film. I don't know what the whole pug thing was about.
I have no idea.
But you know what? I'll let that slide.
So this must be for you big-brained people who watched it 3 or 4 times. I don't even remember that.
How do you not remember the pug?
There was so much other shit to remember. Well,
Future Ben making a brief interruption here. The following clip is from Nate and I's commentary on the David Lynch Dune movie, available on the Words About Books podcast YouTube channel. Why does he have a pug?
Yeah, I don't know. I thought you.
Why are there so many tiny dogs in this movie? Like, you mean to tell me that the Bene Gesserit, obsessed with perfecting the human genome, like, would buy pugs?
They left pugs.
Yeah, like they allowed pugs to continue to exist.
An animal that breathes like this.
Now we're gonna get a lot of pug hate.
Hey, I like pugs. I just wish that, humans didn't ruin them. I think pugs got f***ed by inbreeding. That's on us.
You could tell how exciting the movie is when this is the commentary we're giving.
That's true.
I will say, Nate, on the first viewing, I could imagine it still being at least enjoyable because there's so much just random crap being thrown at you. It's a movie that doesn't hold up, in my opinion, to repeat viewings. And even if I was coming off a long work week and had put down 22 ounces of Guinness, extra stout, I still think I should have enjoyed it more than I did if it was a genuinely fun movie. And I didn't.
Well, that's because that movie is boring.
Well, yes.
It's like you said,
I was actually surprised.
It's shorter than the new movie, but it feels so much longer.
And there was a truly baffling article I saw on IndieWire today. It's actually, I linked to it in my review of the Lynch Dune, which tried to claim that the Lynch film was more fun than the Villeneuve film, and also tried to cite as a positive that the Lynch film actually covered the entire book, when that is a big reason why the Lynch film isn't good, is because it tries to cram a 500-page book into 2 hours and 15 minutes and does an exceptionally bad job of it. In my humble opinion.
Well, this is like people coming out and being like, actually, the prequels of Star Wars were really, really good. Click on my article.
Fair.
I don't know how you can handle the like first act, second act transition in the Lynch film of, and then Alia was born and she had all her genetic memories. You're on board, right, audience who hasn't read the book? You know what I mean by that. Because we're going to keep going on. Now he's riding a worm.
Paul and Channy's love grew. Hey, Jesus, poor Sean Young.
Oh, I was going to say, I just don't know how comparing the David Lynch Dune to the Villeneuve one favorably is anything other than clickbait. I don't know how anybody can do that with a straight face. I haven't seen... I'm sorry, I'm just rambling now.
Isn't that all you do? Hey, I've been doing a lot of 2-hour drives back and forth from where I live to where my dad lives, and I've had time to listen to all 3 episodes of The Fold, so...
Oh, God, I'm sorry.
I'm not. It was actually quite fun.
It was fun for us.
It was 2 hour and 50-minute episodes and then one 35-minute wrap-up episode. You guys really put in the time on that one.
Oh, that doesn't count. We talked about that for hours outside of the podcast.
I believe
we still talk about The Fold.
And now I remember Nate gave me a bunch of books that you'd covered on the podcast for my birthday last year, and one of them was The Fold, so I've got The Fold in my apartment, so I could read it once I finish Catch-22.
That's, yep.
Read a good book for once.
Yeah, follow it up with that. So Nate, one of the things, as you were live tweeting me your viewing of the movie, was the Yui paradox of how do you handle your least favorite part of the book, which was there's a traitor.
There's a traitor.
So I think it was also Villeneuve's least favorite part of the book, because that shit is gone.
You are underselling this. It's not just there's a traitor. It's there's a traitor. There's a traitor. There's a traitor. I might spill the beans about there being a traitor.
The Shoutout Mapes informed him there was a traitor.
Yeah, 3 different people informed 3 different people
At
that there's a
least
traitor.
3 people. Thufir, the Bene Gesserit, Shoutout Mapes.
Leontines didn't, but almost did. Yeah, I think they should have kept it in, but they didn't need to say it 4 times, because I know I read your review. I read your review ahead of. Sorry, I was looking at the audio wave, and it picked up you putting your phone on the on the table. Yeah, no, I read your review ahead of watching the movie, and I was like, they really just cut it all, and then Yui just kind of betrays them out of nowhere.
I do feel a little bad for the actor who played Yui, because that role got stripped way down.
He showed up, I think, in 2 scenes, and one of the scenes was his betrayal.
Let's see. There was him massaging Paul. Okay, not massaging, but diagnosing him by touch. Betraying.
No, he gives
and then the Harkonnen, so 3 scenes.
Yeah, at least. Might have been a 4th. I'll have to rewatch the film to be sure.
But if you're not going to have the betrayal subplot, why is the Shoutout Mapes there? What's her purpose? You know you're right, because that's what I was thinking. If you were going to add a warning about the traitor, it would have made sense to keep the Shoutout Mapes one, because right now she's only in there to tell Jessica, to have an awkward scene, and this is another Frank Herbert dialogue scene where Jessica's about to say the knife is a maker of death, and she gets to the word maker, and then Shoutout Mapes screams. No. That was not a scream. That was some sort of weird chanting screech.
It was like speaking in tongues.
Yes, she has a religious experience. That's at the very least, that's what happens. But I don't know. Was it just me, or did that scene seem awkward?
It was very awkward. I was in the bathroom at first, and I heard it, and I was like, someone chanting? And I went and I rewound, and I'm like, oh.
I didn't leave my seat the entire time I saw it in the theater, and I guess it was moderately awkward, but it didn't take me out of the experience.
Nothing ruined it for me. I just thought that the timing of "It's a Maker" was.
Yeah.
Can you try to replicate the?
I'll double my voice a couple of times, pitch shift it. So yeah, well, and then Paul has to save Mapes from the Hunter Seeker, and I thought for sure it would have been very simple to just have one line of like, "You're in danger. There's a traitor." And I kind of wonder, are we looking at a potential Lord of the Rings director's cut extended edition situation where there is the whole traitor subplot?
It's not a Lord of the Rings director's cut situation anymore, Ben. It's the Snyder cut, okay?
I don't think Villeneuve has done director's cuts for any of his other films, so...
And he's gonna start now. We're gonna get a 5-hour Dune Part 1.
I think he's been willing to keep his... Like, I think he was at one point thinking of making Blade Runner 2049 something like two 2-hour movies or two 2.5-hour movies, and scaled it down to 1 2 3/4 hour movie, so... Unfortunately, I think this is probably what we're gonna get. I am wondering what he might kick down the road to Part 2. Like, you could shift a lot of the suspicion of Jessica to Part 2.
No, just cut that. Just cut that.
Well, especially because Gurney and Thufir still have parts to play.
Yeah, the mini-series just cut Thufir, basically.
Well, you can't cut Kansas City native Stephen McKinley Henderson, who's playing Thufir.
I mean, you can and you might, but
not over my dead body.
I'm sure we can arrange that.
Did you see Fences, son? He was so good as Mr. Bono.
No.
He got one of my own personal Film Award nominations for Best Supporting Actor.
A Jamie?
No, a Golden Gravy. Yeah. I recently rebranded them the Gravy Film Awards.
Do they get anything? Do you send them a trophy and they're like, what the
If I can
fuck
ever
is
afford
this?
to, yes. I will.
A gold-plated gravy boat that is not safe to put hot liquids in.
Well, that might be a little too expensive. Maybe a picture of one.
A picture. Here's what I would send you if I had more money. Please hang this on your mantelpiece and read my blog.
Hey, I'll put it on glossy paper.
Well, so in the Gravy review, you mentioned that there were some aspects of the movie that felt rushed. And I actually read your review before I watched the movie, so we're kind of going in a weird leapfrog here.
Am I going to have to write a review now?
Yeah.
And then he's going to have to read my review before he watches the movie for another time?
But I was wondering, as I was watching the movie, if one of the things you felt was rushed was the whole invasion piece. Because they have, like, the obligatory spice harvester gets eaten scene, and then it's just on. There was no time to like process that information. They don't spend any more time with Leah Kynes. That's kind of where the dinner scene would go, but that was cut.
Yeah, I could say that. I think I felt more like Yui and Piter, their arcs felt rushed to me, particularly because I like David Desmalchian. And I kind of wanted him to at least get one moment to show Piter's creepy fixation on Jessica.
Yeah,
which actually does make it into the Lynch film. Very briefly, but it is there. I understand why. Go ahead.
I was going to say, the whole concept of the I forget what they call them, but it's some kind of like mad or broken mentat. And that's what he is.
Twisted mentat.
Yes. Yeah, it's interesting that didn't make it in, though. I'm sure the scene where that really would have come to fruition would have been the scene that Nate loved the most from the Lynch film.
Which so gross. He spits directly into her mouth. Just ugh.
I think he only lands on her face.
It goes right in her mouth.
Okay.
It traumatized him.
I have PTSD now, sir. So well, that was the thing we were talking about, was they could have stood to have more breathing room to develop these characters, but you brought up a good point, and I jokingly brought it up when we were talking about the first book last year. Most of these characters don't matter, and they die, and then we just move on in the book, so why spend more time developing them?
And we're also overlooking what I think is the main point, which is that almost everything that's actually on the screen is extremely well done.
It's so dense.
Like, almost every performance is leagues ahead of what was in the Lynch film. And I can't speak for the miniseries.
Hold on. Sting was...
Sting is in that movie for maybe 7 minutes of total screen time. Maybe 8.
And he left an amazing impression.
Yeah, but he could only make the impression within the context of an 80s cheese fest.
Yeah, he left an amazing gif that everyone uses when they talk about Dune.
So where are we thinking about Fade Routha? Is he just not going to show up and they're going to merge him with Raban and Paul is going to fight Dave Bautista in the finale of the next movie if it gets made?
I think they'll bring in Fade.
I don't know if they'll bring in Fade. I think on one hand, this is very like inside baseball Dune, I guess. But on one hand, I feel like they kind of have to bring in Fade to, or they introduce a little bit of a plot hole with why Jessica was only supposed to have daughters. Because had Paul been born female, he was supposed to marry Fade, thus healing the rift between the two families. And because Jessica didn't do that...
Of course, Frank Herbert was writing in a time before same-sex marriage was legalized, and he was also quite possibly a significant homophobe. Now, of course, Paul could marry Fade Routha.
It's true, he could.
No problem.
Unless you're in, what was it, Kentucky, where the... I mean, I know it was a recent news story, but...
Canley fried chicken.
Canley fried chicken. That is great.
I'm sure Baron Harkonnen ate a few of that. Speaking of which, I made a point of noting on your Twitter that when I was seeing the movie for the first time, the Villeneuve film, and Baron Harkonnen makes his first appearance nude in a sauna, I immediately thought of Nate and his fixation on showing the Baron Harkonnen as naked and jiggling, and I just thought,
oh my god, that went right over my head. You're right. They clearly listened to our podcast. That was for you, Nate.
Well, if speaking on that note, before they'd announced the official cast, I'd been doing some head casting with a friend of mine, and we had both said Oscar Isaac should play Duke Leto. And then they announced the cast, and it was Oscar Isaac, and I was like, oh. And then you cut...
I was going to say, did you have Stellan Skarsgård as the Baron? Because that shocked me.
I actually forget who I had. I want to say John Goodman.
Yeah,
I can see that.
This Baron was actually naked and jiggling, but he seemed the least likely of the 3 live adaptations to jiggle and be merry. This guy was like you called him, he's almost portrayed as like a horror monster. Or like the Emperor in Star Wars, I guess. I keep going back to Star Wars. I need to get another like sci-fi thing that everyone knows about.
He's just a little bit of gore shy of being a Cenobite. The only thing I didn't like about the visual portrayal of the Baron was, James, you posted a picture of Fat Bastard from Austin Powers, and I was thinking to myself, like, man, fat suit technology hasn't come very far. Like, I could have done with a little more jiggling. I think it was kind of very obvious it was a fat suit.
Well,
or he could have put in the work and he could have eaten up for his role. He just didn't want to do that.
I've seen Stellan Skarsgård do far more demeaning things for roles. I've seen Nymphomaniac twice. So, I don't know.
I think it was the neck that got me. It was the neck fat. They built this weird, like, neck muscle that went into his tiny shoulders. When he was wearing the robe, I was all in on it. The sauna scene was a little weird.
And then you got the scene where he was in his bath of, like, balsamic vinaigrette.
Yeah. Yeah.
Came out tasting all delicious.
Yeah. I'm trying to decide if I like what's sillier. So obviously I like the Baron portrayal in this more than the David Lynch film. But I was talking with Nate as he was watching it, and I think I might actually agree that the miniseries Baron is maybe just a little less ridiculous. He's not as intimidating as the Villeneuve Baron, but he's more relatable, but obviously that's not what they're going for.
I think it's my favorite portrayal of the Baron.
And again, I haven't seen the miniseries, so I can't directly comment on that.
Well, you need to. He says a line that my wife loved, where he turns to Ollie and says, "What is this, some sort of midget?" And she just died.
The thing
I can't picture this Baron saying that. He'd just eat the child.
I could picture Stellan Skarsgård saying that line. Stellan Skarsgård just, like, straight out. I mean,
yeah, but it seems like he would say it in a way that's, like, not funny. He would say it in a way that's like, I'm gonna eat this child or something.
Got some comic chops, let me tell you. If you've seen as many Lars von Trier films as I have,
it sounds awful. It sounds like my version of hell.
Stellan Skarsgård is kind of playing the most, like, masculine version of the Baron.
Big Chad Baron.
Oh, kind of. I mean, his voice is... every other portrayal of the Baron I've seen has either been, like, manic or slightly effeminate. And...
He does have Oscar Isaac strict.
There is that. I mean, they're obviously keeping his vices in the story. I imagine they'll do more with that.
So is he going to try and diddle some boys in the next part?
That's what I was tastefully trying to hint at, yes.
I'm
glad I could tastefully reveal that.
His perverted predilections.
Yes.
As it were.
I was surprised to see Oscar Isaac naked. That got my wife to put her cell phone down.
I'll just say that I'm really glad Oscar Isaac and Jessica Chastain have done, like, multiple properties together, because they're, like, my two main celebrity crushes, I think.
I like Oscar Isaac. And
he's a great actor, too. Have you ever seen Ex Machina?
Yes.
Well, I mean, that's not the only movie he's good in, but he is great in that movie.
I almost forget that's him just because it's so different from the other stuff I've seen him in.
Like that scene where he just starts dancing.
Yeah.
I first saw him in the, modern classic Sucker Punch.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
A movie which at the time I actually thought wasn't that bad. And it wasn't just because he was devastatingly handsome. It was also like, this dude's got something. This dude's got, like, a presence that goes beyond just the confines of this role. That's somebody to watch. And then ever since then, he's one of those people who I've been rooting for.
Well, he's definitely made it. I mean, I'm happy for him. Like, I hope Dune does well as the sci-fi franchise, because it's a much better role for him than Poe.
Well,
not to drag Star Wars into this.
I've already been doing it this whole time. But you said you hope the Dune franchise does well. Is this the definitive sci-fi franchise of our time, post 9/11 or whatever it is they're saying?
I mean, that's a lot of years to cover, but what would you say?
The sci-fi movie of our generation?
I think it certainly could be. Do you think there's any other contenders?
I mean...
For, like, hard science fiction?
Oh, hard science fiction. Okay, because I was going to say, if you want to go in... Depending on how you want to count the Marvel films, they have impacted the zeitgeist more than I think any film of a 50-year-old book could.
Guardians of the Galaxy is probably a lot of kids' Star Wars. Like, as Star Wars was to us, Guardians is probably to them. So I think they do the sci-fi adventure stuff well. But as far as like, I'm trying to think of like
Avatar.
No.
Like hard sci-fi kind of died. We haven't had a Space Odyssey or even like Battlestar Galactica or
because there's not enough action.
Interstellar, I think, made a try at that, and it didn't quite land, although, in my view, it deserved to.
Which one was that?
The Christopher Nolan film where they try to find a new home for humanity.
Oh.
And a lot of people
Was the new home secretly Earth all along?
No.
Okay.
No, there wasn't a twist like that. I think there was a twist, but it wasn't like that. No, and that was a film which a lot of people didn't really care for, which I really liked. So I think that film sort of tried to be a big touchstone, brainy sci-fi epic for this generation, and it didn't quite penetrate the zeitgeist. So we'll see what this one can do.
I mean, what was the last major tentpole hard sci-fi film?
Blade Runner 2049, which also didn't land popularly, but it deserved to.
Okay, but it didn't, so that wouldn't have been it.
No.
So when would the last one have been?
That actually
was it Odyssey?
My point is, I think
2001:
Dune wins.
Space Odyssey.
Dune wins by default.
The two sweetest words in the English
or
language.
it's just a vacant title.
Or it's just a vacant title. Or it's just something that hasn't been done because we lost our passion for space.
And that, funny you should mention that, because I recently rewatched Apollo 13, and a major theme in that movie is how after we made it to the moon, the public kind of just stopped caring about the space program, because they didn't care about going to the moon for exploration or scientific purposes. They just wanted to beat the Russians to the moon.
Yeah, it was a sporting event.
What do you mean we lost our passion for space? Ben, do you know how many people think it would be easier to just move to Mars than to, like, fix our problems here?
Well, I mean, William Shatner went up there.
And George Takei made fun of him, and now they're in a Twitter war.
I was secretly hoping that, like, Elon Musk would send George Takei up just to piss off Shatner and Bezos. I was hoping, like, we don't have the USSR around anymore to prompt us to do great things, so maybe we can just have, like, petty Twitter rivalries.
I mean, there is China.
Can you imagine Joseph Stalin with a Twitter account?
That sounds like a second-tier SNL sketch. Great famous despots with Twitter accounts. Mao and Stalin beefing at each other. Hitler's still on... what was that? Parler. Hitler on Parler.
Hitler would be on Parler, yes. It's Free Speech
I think there was
Week.
a movie. No, it was a pilot episode.
Oh, Heil Honey, I'm Home?
Yeah, where it's Hitler and Eva Braun, and they're in, like, a suburban apartment or
Heil
house
Honey,
or
I'm
something.
Home. It was a British
Oh
sitcom
my god.
spoof that...
And their neighbors are Jewish. Oh, dear.
I think I've heard it was actually funnier than you might think, but still not good enough to overcome, like,
the Holocaust. Yeah.
Still not good enough to overcome the Holocaust. God.
That's the name of an autobiography.
Yeah.
God knows whose. I just checked. Dune made $17.5 million opening day, so that's looking at somewhere between. Well, this website said 40 million plus. I'm betting close to 50 million opening weekend, which could point to, depending on what kind of legs it has, we could be looking at between 125 and 175 million domestic, which I think would be pretty respectable for a film that they're also expecting to do strong business on streaming, and it's already made a decent amount of money overseas. And that's me putting my film nerd hat on, of course.
So one of the issues I was having was after the invasion, and I loved the invasion. I loved the Sardaukar ritual. I loved the bombs penetrating the shields. I loved the shield fights. But after all that, and Paul and Jessica escape, it kind of felt like the movie blew all its momentum and had to start building up again from scratch. And that's where I was like, I was honestly expecting the movie to end. I was expecting credits to roll at the very least after Duncan Idaho died. So I just kept waiting. I was like, wow, how far are they going to go into the book before they call it? Because like there's really no more good ending spots.
The big finale is, and then he killed Jameis.
Yeah.
I'm surprised wasn't cut from the movie entirely.
Well, I think that worked. And I think that worked because it's a major transition in Paul's character. He's crossed the Rubicon into casting his lot with the Fremen. Even Jessica makes a last attempt to say, no, we've got to get off this planet, and Paul says, no, this is where my path leads. We were sent here. My father took this path not to make himself rich, but because of his honor, his sense of duty. So this is what I have to do. And so I think ending it with him and Jessica being fully drawn into the Fremen, I think that worked. I think that worked as a place to end part one. Because I figured it would at least get to the Fremen.
Yeah, I mean, that's as good a place as any, I guess. From like I'm of two minds on it. From Ben, who wants the best adaptation of the book, it's great. Because I like all the significance of it. I like the way he handles the visions of Chani. He makes them ominous, attached to the jihad. But then you meet Chani, and she's not this like evil queen or temptress or something like that, that if you didn't know what was going on, you might have thought from the tone of the visions. And Paul had this vision of Chani where she stabbed him. He had a vision of Chani where she showed him around. He had a vision of Jameis where Jameis was friendly with him. And so I think what Villeneuve was trying to communicate there was Paul seeing all the potential different futures and then falling into the path that eventually leads to the jihad and all the problems, obviously, that come with that. And so as a place to end and then start the next movie, I think that ends on a good point in Paul's arc. I just don't know how obvious that's going to be to a general audience who doesn't really have the context to interpret some of the vision stuff yet.
Or how about Nate, who was half paying attention because he was dealing with a child? And my response was, oh, that was the end. Okay. I remember he was fighting Jameis, and you told me, well, there's like 5 or maybe 10 minutes left in the movie. I was like, what? How?
I was surprised they ended there, but I don't know that this is, again, I don't blame Villeneuve. I don't know how to do it better. This is just...
It's a Frank Herbert problem.
It's a Frank Herbert problem. The first book could have been tighter.
The problem with the first book, well, one of the problems with the first book is there's like potentially 2.5 movies there. Like you can end it after the invasion, and you can end it like around the spice orgy, that time skip. But there's not a whole movie in between those 2 points in the book. Unless you want to have an extended scene of him losing his bag in the sand and then having to find his bag in the sand again.
So you basically want to do Jerry on Arrakis.
Yeah. So it really feels like there's only material for 2.5 movies, and what you do with that other little half is you got to put it somewhere. So that also raises a question. I thought I read that the director, whose name I'm going to get wrong, so I'm not even going to try, he wanted to do 3 movies, which would end at the end of Messiah. I guess, do you think, A, he'll get to do those 3 movies, and B, it should end at Messiah?
I think if you do Messiah, you got to do Children of Dune.
That's what I think too.
Yeah, I think Dune, Messiah, and Children of Dune complete one arc in the Dune Chronicles, and that's a fine place to stop.
Yeah, it's what the miniseries did.
Yeah.
I guess I haven't asked, how many Dune books have you read, James?
I've only read the first Dune.
Okay.
I think I found a copy of Messiah when I was clearing out my parents' house, but I didn't keep it. I did keep National Lampoon's Doon, which involves, instead of spice, it's beer.
Okay.
And I might read that at some point. But, I wonder if Frank Herbert ever read that.
Remind me of this next year if we don't end up doing Children of Dune for the entire month. Apparently
Maybe
it's
I'll
like 1,000 pages. I know.
Maybe I'll read it and you can just, read off my thoughts. Or have me guessed again.
Yeah, so would I like to see him adapt that? Yeah, it's kind of a if you give a mouse a cookie thing. Like, if you give me Dune Messiah, I'm gonna want Children of Dune to go with it. If you give me Children of Dune, I gotta know what the hell somebody would do with God Emperor. If Dune...
Yes.
If you give a Villeneuve a franchise.
Yeah. If Dune is a challenge to adapt, like if we're having these issues with the pacing of Dune, God Emperor of Doom, it might just actually be unfilmable.
I mean, no, it's not unfilmable. You could film a guy spouting philosophy for 5 hours in a giant worm suit.
Just
so that's what
translate
you
it into French. You'll get an award at Cannes. I actually just found out about a French art film from the 50s which has no actual imagery. It's just dialogue over alternate... Well, when people talk, the screen is white, and when they don't talk, it's black. And it just goes on like this for an hour and 20 minutes. And the last 25 minutes of the film are black silence.
It sounds like one of the podcasts I uploaded to YouTube. I think they're ripping me off.
Well, the title, I forget what the exact title is, but I know it mentions de Sade, the Marquis de Sade, so it's obviously an instrument of torture. And I say this as somebody who actually likes art cinema. I'm one of those people. I thought Titan was great, if you haven't seen it.
Also, can I briefly mention that this is the only adaptation that knew what an ornithopter was?
Yes. Love the ornithopters.
It has wings and they flap.
Yeah, it was basically just a big mechanical dragonfly, and it was great.
I thought
it worked.
Yeah, all the technology of the universe was really, really well realized. And Arrakeen looked like Arrakeen. It looked exactly like how I imagined it from the books.
But you know what the big problem was? They didn't have glowing blue eyes.
No, their eyes were actually the way they should have been.
Yes.
Yeah,
and the effect,
big downer.
And the effect was applied consistently. There weren't like whole 30-second clips where they forgot to do it. Like the BBC and at David Lynch.
It wasn't the BBC, it was the Sci-Fi Channel.
Well, it aired on both.
Also, that's true. Also, still suits recycle more than just sweat, sir.
I knew you were going to do this.
Madam.
I knew you were going to do this.
Oh,
why didn't you mention the urine and the fecal matter? Come on.
Say feces. They made. You think you're better than Max von Sydow? He had to read that line. Say feces.
I once made a set of memes where it was taking actors, like famous actors, and putting lines from like their worst movies over images from their best movies. And I took Max von Sydow in The Seventh Seal and put the line, urine and feces are processed in the thigh pads over it. It's perfect. I also put a picture of George C. Scott as George S. General Patton and took a line from the movie The Day of the Dolphin.
I don't know what that is.
It has the greatest tagline in film history. Unwittingly, he trained a dolphin to kill the President of the United States.
That sounds like the best line.
And it's not meant to be funny.
Oh.
But yeah, no, on an aesthetic level, I think Villeneuve's version is just... The word I used initially was unimpeachable. Like, I'm a fan of brutalist architecture, and I thought the way they used it in this film, and even differentiated it. Like, the Atreides brutalism is distinct from the Harkonnen brutalism in a way that really worked. Like, the Atreides, and I think I'm sort of trying to remember what I wrote in my own review, because I tend to forget what I write once I've written it. But in the Atreides, it felt like history, like legacy, like ancestry. Like, this is the home of a noble family that's been there for generations. And the Harkonnen, it felt like the architectural equivalent of malice. Like, everything was black and squat and hunched and just miserable. The way the Harkonnen should be. And yeah, maybe I did kind of miss the lime green walls of David Lynch's Gidi Prime. Although I still don't know what was up with the building with the gaping mouth.
Because you can. You have that much money and power, why not?
A mouth that looks like it's about to perform some obscene act.
It is the Baron.
Yeah. But,
yeah. I will say for Nate, one thing I can give you as a gift. So my wife watched the movie with me, and I think it was in the tent scene where Paul finally freaks out. My wife goes, "So are you supposed to like Jessica?"
Ouch.
The answer is no. She's a garbage person. Did you turn to her and say, just wait till the next film, she snorts crack while she is pregnant?
Well, no, I didn't say that. I said it was weird to me because Frank Herbert seems to like Jessica quite a bit, but also Frank Herbert wrote it so that every other character in the books is constantly reminding you what a crap job Jessica did and how all of this is her fault.
I just realized, Alia is a crack baby.
That was my point from the podcast.
Oh, yeah. I tend to tune you out and just listen to Ben, honestly.
That's the
pretty
way to
easy
do it.
to do.
Yeah. Well, and to be fair, I think we trimmed down the number of times you said crack baby.
Space crack baby.
By like a factor of 5. There was like a good 20-minute rant about that.
Oh yeah, you cut that down to like a 3 hours from 10 hours?
At least.
Words about Dune.
Might we say, well, I would like to say a little bit about the performances. We talked about the aesthetic. I
didn't have enough sting.
I thought I like Kyle MacLachlan quite a bit, generally, but rewatching the Lynch Dune, I felt he was too mature from the beginning, where I think Timothée Chalamet does a really good job of showing how he's kind of just this callow kid who's got the seeds of nobility in him, but he's got to develop. Like, he starts from a point where you can build an arc of how he grows into Muad'Dib rather than just being... With MacLachlan, it's like, nah, this dude's gonna, be running things sooner rather than later. Like, by the time he joins the Fremen, he's like, Stilgar's practically just handing him the keys to the Siege. Where Chalamet, his performance felt more real.
Chalamet, to me, has a big advantage in that he looks like Paul, and he's physically small. They don't really go into what age Paul is in the movie, but in the books, he's 15. And so far, every adaptation I've seen has cast a Paul that looks like he's in his 20s, if not his 30s, and is trying to play 15, because a lot of Paul's dialogue as written is juvenile. He's like a blank slate for a large chunk of the book, and he's just trying to please the adults around him like a child does, and then he eventually grows into leadership. And I think Timothée Chalamet does a better job of acting like a moody teen, and it's more believable, again, just because he's put next to these people like Jason Momoa and Josh Brolin, and so that little thing where Jason Momoa picks on him for being scrawny, it feels a lot more believable. Even Oscar Isaac looks like a mature man standing next to a boy when he's standing next to Paul.
Right. And your point about Jason Momoa, I really, really enjoyed his Duncan. Like, I liked Richard Jordan's a really good character actor. He played Duncan in the Lynch film, and he barely gets a look in. But Jason Momoa really made the most out of his role here, and his Last Stand was just some great action filmmaking.
The biggest crime of them not getting to do Dune Messiah, if they don't get to do it, is that we will not get to see Jason Momoa play the best Duncan Idaho stuff in the series. Duncan Idaho, I mean, this is spoilers, I guess, a little bit. He comes back in Dune Messiah, and it is, he's in the entire book. He's arguably, by the end of the Frank Herbert Dune books, he's arguably the most important person in the galaxy. I mean,
and he gets with a child.
They're definitely going to have to tweak some of this for the movies.
They didn't have to do it for They didn't have to do it for Twilight.
well,
that's because they said he was 17 forever.
I was thinking of Jacob. She couldn't write her way around Jacob. I watched
Jacob.
Well, it doesn't matter because he got with a baby, a literal infant.
Oh, that's right. I was thinking of him and Belle. I was like, I don't see how that's a problem. No, you're right. He, oh boy, that's right. Oh god.
No, I watched. There's a YouTube channel, Cinema Therapy, where a therapist and a director watch movies, and the therapist, I think, described it as like Stephanie Meyer's a sniper on the grassy knoll, just assassinating Jacob's character over and over and over again.
Well, he's not going to get with a literal baby, okay? He's going to raise her first and then get with her.
That's not... Yeah, that's
it's just grooming.
Considerably worse.
It's just grooming. It's not trafficking, right? But yeah, I thought Josh Brolin was great. I thought
better than Patrick Stewart. Sorry, Sir Patrick Stewart.
Patrick Stewart, I will say, did the best he could with what he had. He just hardly had anything. Josh Brolin did a very good job with a solid role. Yeah,
I think Josh Brolin had... Patrick Stewart was... I always thought he was kind of miscast as Gurney Halleck.
Well, didn't we establish that's because he was hired and Lynch thought he was someone else?
Yeah, I actually didn't know that until I was researching my review of the Lynch film and discovered that, but...
Yeah.
That kind of just fits the general pattern of the production of that film, which was a gigantic cluster F***.
Just say fuck. He's gonna censor it.
Oh.
Yeah, I'll bleep it.
He's got to edit it. So,
but the thing that's challenging for every adaptation, and it's kind of a weird point in the book, is Gurney Halleck and Duncan Idaho are kind of the same person. I think the Villeneuve film does a good job of differentiating them.
Well, the book had differentiated them by making one of them sing.
Yes, one of them can sing. But then, as you know, Nate, in Dune Messiah, when Duncan Idaho comes back as a Zensuni Mentat, he does a lot of quoting poetry and such as well.
But they solve that by making Gurney Holloway go and bang Jessica and Caladan.
Yeah,
that's
which
weird.
Which is doubly weird because
that's real weird.
She rejects Duncan Idaho, who again is essentially the same person. I'm glad they didn't do that. I'm glad they didn't do. The only reason I didn't want them to really do the men suspect Jessica thing is because Duncan Idaho has a lot of limited screen time in the book, and that just serves to make you not like Duncan.
Yeah, it kind of comes off as a dick a little bit.
So
you can shift it to Gurney, I think, because he seems more like when he says lines like "You don't know, you've never met Harkonnens, I have." Like you can sense that this guy's seen some shit.
Yeah, the Josh Brolin Gurney,
they're brutal,
hard ass,
and every vein in his neck is popping and like tendons that I think aren't in most humans.
I don't know the medical... Nate's the medical professional. I don't know how to rename tendons.
Josh Brolin-itis.
When he said brutal, I would like you to pause on that frame and, like, diagnose what's wrong with his neck.
Josh Brolin-itis. Serious case.
So, Nate, I want to ask you specifically, how do you like Javier Bardem's Stilgar?
Actually, for some reason, I thought you were going to say, how do you like, they tried to take the life of my son.
I never like that line, you know that. I bring that up every time we talk about Dune. It's just too many words. Nobody would say that many words when they're like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's bad writing. But it's bad writing. It's a direct line from the book. Of all the stuff you could have taken, I wouldn't have taken that. And I do like how Oscar Isaac knows. He doesn't say the next thing in the book. He like jumps into another line in the script, and it's like he moves past that line so fast. Like he knows they can't linger on it. Because in the book, Leto says that. In the book, Leto says they tried to take the life of my son like 4 times in a row with an increasing volume. It's awful.
That's how normal people talk. Now, you're asking a question about Stilgar, and I guess my response would be, I really would need to see the second film and or rewatch this one, because I didn't get a whole lot of difference between this and the miniseries.
Well, I will say one of my favorite moments in the Lynch film is right after Paul kills Fade, and he shouts the killing word to like make Fade's organs burst. And Stilgar says, "Moi deep." Like Paul just whipped out his dick and it's like 13 inches long. Like Everett McGill delivered the hell out of that line.
He did have. I also like that we have worm sign the likes of which even God has never seen. Which doesn't make sense because the worms are God, but that's fine.
But Javier Bardem did. I really liked when he came in and just spat on the floor or the desk, and Gurney was about to like skewer him.
Yeah, they were really, like, trigger happy. They were ready to fight people.
Well, they knew that they were walking into the lion's den with Arrakis. But, you know, a dude comes into the boss's office and spits on the desk, you know, you don't necessarily have a reason to not.
Yeah, if anything, I thought Oscar Isaac was, like, perhaps too cool with all of it. Like, no, yeah, come in, spit on my desk, insult my men. You can punch my wife, kick my son.
Well, it is the Lady Jessica.
I really need that. Alliance.
Oh wait, hold on.
Yeah, they didn't marry.
Ben.
Sorry.
Yeah,
they didn't
marry.
So that's another
what
thing.
Kind of Dune fan are you?
He should have married her.
Yeah, I wish they hadn't done, like, just for audiences watching this, because, like, people who didn't read the book or see any of the other stuff, I know my mom is going to watch this movie, and when Oscar Isaac says, "I should have married you," she's going to be like, "What?" Because they never mention she's a concubine?
Oh.
They tried to take the life of his son.
They got tea.
I don't know what to tell you.
Nate, they got tea. Remember that? That bad Jamie Foxx movie?
Oh, God, why am I... Oh, God, I feel like I'm having some sort of, like, repressed memory coming out.
Yeah, it was like you showed me the trailer for this bad Jamie Foxx movie, and it was, I forget if it was an analysis of that trailer or what, but there's the line, "They got tea!" And they just dwell on that line. And it became, like, the joke of that day.
They tried to take the life of tea.
I will say I love how after the Thopter crashes, Jessica, or it's maybe after they've gotten rid of the guards, I forget, but Jessica, like, gives Paul a little finger wagging, like, "You're still not quite right with the pitch." It's like such a perfect mother-son moment.
Yeah.
And then he was like, "F*** you, Mom. You're not the boss of me. You made me into a monster.
And then put on his headphones and lay on his back and stared at the ceiling.
And then he dropped his bag in the sand dunes, and then he had to spend like 15 on-screen minutes retrieving it.
I think it
looked good.
It looked real good.
It was the goodest looking good stuff I've seen.
I'll tell you how book critics talk. I mean, the book was better, but no. In this case, honestly, I think the movie. If you're not like me and you don't like to read a bunch of weird, dry, boring philosophical crap, I think the movie's better. I think this is the best chance we've got of getting quote unquote normies into Dune. And I know Dune is one of the most successful sci-fi books of all time. And so it's weird to say normies because so many people have read it. But like, I know a lot of people have heard of Dune, but I don't know that many people who are super into it. And I think this just, it gets it. It changed everything it could change without losing the essence of Dune. And that's kind of like the best and the worst thing about it is the sad truth is, like, the first book of Dune probably needs significant rewrites to be a truly great, truly accessible movie.
Call up Ernest Cline.
But, well, Nate, they already have a master of the craft as an executive producer. I don't know if you watched any of the credits.
Nope.
I forget who you're referring to.
None other than Mr. Brian Herbert himself.
Oh, perfect.
Was an executive producer.
Yeah, and then he can afford that gold boat that he always wanted.
Yeah, and he's got a new book out. I won't say the title of it because A, I don't remember it, and B, I don't need to plug him, but it's out there somewhere.
The Tears of the Sardaukar.
Sardaukar don't cry.
It's a Sardaukar. Well, that's what makes him different. That's why he's the main character. He can cry, and
there was a Sardaukar.
Sad.
Okay, so this has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but there was a Sardaukar book, and you know what I was getting? I was getting major Mandalorian vibes. I thought they were going to try to turn the Sardaukar into the Mandalorians.
You've read another Dune book?
I dabble, Nate.
I
have a morbid curiosity.
Are we going to talk about that book next year on Words About Dune?
Am I going to listen to it on one of my lengthy intercity drives?
Find out next time on Words About Books. Well, in all seriousness, though, guys, I think we're reaching the end point. So, any final thoughts?
Yeah, 3 stars. It was shorter than the book.
87 out of 100 first time, possibly more second time.
I'll go full nerdgasm. Give it an A+. So
that's 3 different grading scales.
So now we have to add them all together and divide them by 3. Good luck figuring that one out.
I've had too much to drink.
The total is a resounding smiley face, winky face.
A little gold sticker with "good job" written in it.
You're
so
1/5 of the way to a pizza party.
Oh God, can you imagine?
Reading Dune
and getting only 1 star.
All right, so I think we'll call it here. This has been Words About Books. You can check us out on Twitter at WABpod. You can buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/WABpod. James, I know you plugged it once, but let's plug it again. You got a Twitter? You got a blog?
If you want the gravy.wordpress.com.
And don't forget, we have a Facebook page now. Bye.
Words About Books. I've got a stage-trained voice. I know when not to break character.